Guillemot and Marc has come up to join me on the stage, and we'll hand over to you.
So you have Tivrin, who give us your presentation, and then we will have a 10-minute Q&A session. I'm Thibault, Guillemot. I'm the founder of the Holusion company. We are a specialist of the 3D hologram technology. I am Marc. I'm a teacher at the Université de Lille. I'm expert in the Middle Ages era. We are going to tell you about a 5-year project that will finish this year. And we will tell you about what we achieved with this project. It's called IRHIS-UMR. It brings together academics, museum directors, and an engineering company, curators, and a company that is specialized in holograms. The goal of this research project was 5 years ago to create a 3D database. We know about conventional databases for museums with pictures and just as we wanted to still use this type of databases because they have their qualities, but we wanted to have 3D items with information directly linked to these items and on which we could work in a collaborative manner. So this e-corpus, as we called it, was supposed to work for researchers, for fundamental research, for a work in collaboration remotely on these items. So we could have added to these 3 images, we could have added metadata for fundamental research. And on the other hand, applying this for museums. So here we would link metadata, links to mediation. This is the starting point of the project. The first phase of the project was to manage to model some objects. I'm a specialist of the Middle Ages, and in particular, we wanted to make these objects virtual, the objects that shine a lot. This was really the main challenge and the main goal. Otherwise, there was no point. So we put together a method for goldsmithery. We used tools that already existed. We created a low-cost method that can be used by museums and by cultural institutions following a quick training. The first phase of the project, we implemented this method, this 3D modeling method for high quality and very precise items. And then we started working on this e-corpus. We started with an open source app that was launched by the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, and then we developed it depending on the goals of the IRHIS consortium. We developed this app. Specificity was to create with information on the item that can then be seen on smartphones, on iPads, on tablets for a remote museum with holograms. So now we are rolling out this app, and now I'll give the floor to my colleague. He will tell you more about this. So indeed, we took part in this project how to give more value to these databases, and we co-developed a tool with museums and universities that allow both to store items, to create notes for them, and then to export them for mediation apps. We had a few ideas in mind based on what already existed. We didn't want to have a proprietary application. We wanted each institution to own their data, and it's based on an open source browser. They can add any media, pictures, documents directly linked to the object. Then we wanted to have both features, so both the scientific work with several users, with signing in, with history, being able to say, well, that each line was written by so and so, so that we could quote their work. And then once this app is first, we can easily export the work in order to have apps on smartphones, on tablets, without depending on a supplier, a developer, an IT developer, or a graphic designer. So we have a first app, a prototype, which you can see on the G05 still, and you can see 6 items from the database. Cool. We've done quite a bit of work in Agile rolling out of this app so that people could experience. And in 2022, we had the holographic totem that was launched in Lille and in the Learning Center of Lille, which is the virtual library of Lille, and students can start using this app. Right here sums up the second phase of the project. You can see how we acquire grammetric data and how we create links with documents for each of the items. Starting from the work of a content editor working on the corpus app that will then be rolled out on smartphones, on tablets, as we mentioned earlier, and with holograms. The point in this, as my colleague said earlier, is that the museum or the institution remains the owner of all this data and these items. And it's a scheme that can be rolled out and that can easily evolve and be developed. So that's also an important point. And the last point in using these holograms is that this idea, what you see here on screen, on the slide, is exactly meets the goals of the research project that we started in 2018. I think it's wonderful that we managed to tick all the boxes. The point in using these holograms is that meant for a remote museum so that their collection can be known in a city, and this is how it's used in the settlement town, which is a partner of the project, to present the works of art of a museum, attracting the inhabitants of the town to the museum, conceiving exhibitions that are entirely virtual. So you have a room with virtual items, but you can also design an exhibition that is partly virtual with actual items and items that you cannot obtain. You cannot travel this far because they're rare and they're difficult to obtain for museums to obtain to be lent to these objects. So this is a fundamental point. The last thing that we work on in this consortium is for publics with specific needs. We are working on 3D printing. One of the items, for instance, needs to be modeled, but we have ammos, for instance, that are on copper, and they have. We want them to not be swayed, so that people with disabilities can understand these items as well. So we have a very high definition 3D model, which means that we can answer these specific needs. We have a specific company that is in charge of this. And one last part, the app has already been developed for a new project as well that will be presented within a year at the museum in Lille, for not for goldsmithery, but the coronary globes. And there are 2 versions at this museum in Lille, and they have the same characteristics as the goldsmithery items that I mentioned earlier. They shine, which makes it difficult. Thank you very much. So if you have a few questions, so that we continue our conversation, other questions in the public? It is brought. I'm not sure I've understood. You've talked about a consortium, and there's an open source part, or is this an app that we have to buy? Currently, in our business model, we are in a model in which all the models are open source, so they're free to use. But in the training, you adapt to the needs of the museum or institution and all of the services around the rolling out of such an app. But the goal is indeed to make it free. The whole browser is open source. It's public research, so it's our duty to use open source. If we want, we already need to have these items in 3D, right? Yes, this is really a database which is dedicated to having a thesaurus of 3D items. So you don't have the app on the phone that allows to make 3D pictures. If we want to acquire this 3D item, we have a lot of archaeologists that now have iPhone Pros, and you can have 3D objects that are directly compatible with this database. The point in this app is also that you can add to the 3D model, you can add the documents, you can add conventional pictures or videos or sound, and you can even open the app and create links with other websites. So in the app, we talk about such point or such point, and we add hyperlinks, videos, images, 2D images to have further data on these items. Thank you very much. Earlier, you mentioned the Saint-Omer example with this remote exhibition. You also carried out projects with the Trésor in Liège and the library in Lille. Can you tell us a bit about this? So the Lille Library is just an exhibition for a trial of the hologram and app, and the partner museums are the Sandlin Museum in Saint-Omer. They're one of the first partners, and they funded part of their research and development. It's the Fine Arts Museum in Lille. We managed to work on many of their items, and they're also a scientific partner as well as a financial partner. Or the treasure in Liège, they're a scientific partner. Just as the Cluny Museum in Paris, they're a partner for the scientific work. We work with curators that are specialized in the Middle Ages, and we also work with the Liège Uni. And my colleague, who's a professor, an IT professor, also works on the photogrammetric aspect of things and on the development of the app. Pierre Hallot. And we also have a colleague who is also an expert in Middle Ages from the Uni of Nancy. So this research team has been around since 2018, but they come from a big exhibition that I carried out in 2013 with the Cluny Museum. Thank you so much. Regarding the operation of this platform, which is open source, apparently, what are the different uses, the business model that you have in mind to make it sustainable in the long run? It's a good question because it's not something that we are used to. Each and every one of the control sites own their own items in the database. So this requires to have a local setup on a server. That's the first cost of this, actually, to be capable of deploying this and rolling this out on a local server. Once we have this database, we can deploy local apps. The current model is to support cultural sites for the rolling out of this database. And if the IT services truly don't allow for it, is to have a hosting capacities that allow for the but all of the items inside remain the property of the museum, which is the difference with software as a service where we have a user agreement and it's the IT supplier who owns the data. The goal is for the institution itself to upload all the data. And it's a quite simple system. Indeed, I was in charge of uploading data for the 3 first items, and honestly, I managed to do it. So trust me, it was a good crash test. I'm an art historian. I'm no expert in this type of app, and it's very quick. It's very user friendly. And at the time, really, it was really the premises of this work on the app. And yet, within 3 days, of course, it requires to have prepared the documents ahead of time. So our curator and art history colleagues, we created the documents, the articles, the descriptions, the more detailed documents as well, and the visit scenarios, because there are automatic visits and pathways that start once you launch the application. So once you've drafted all of these explanations, it's very easy within a few hours or a few days to upload the information on these items on the app. And for the following items, our friend from the Museum of Fine Arts that was in charge of this, because it's mostly their data that is on the app. And it took half a day for me to train her. And then with a PDF document that I created, it took her a few days to upload all the items. It's a simple tool that is available for museums and institutions. And the institution should make the most of this, because it's very easy, very useful. Thank you so much. It gives us more details on how these things work. Wonderful. And as for the use, once you've uploaded the data, you also provide support to the institutions for the implementation of virtual museums, exhibitions, and so on, or do you just provide the tool on the platform itself? No, indeed, as a company, our goal is to support institutions in the deployment difficulties or in the creation of apps dedicated to mediation within museum, including the mediation apps that we have in mind right now. It's the access to collection on the website of the museum, via tablet, via augmented reality, on physical possibility in the museum, so presenting items that are missing but that are complementary, for instance. And of course, our business at first is to use holograms and new technologies to visualize these things. We've been working on this since 2014. We've been supporting museums on the use of this technology to give more visibility to their works of arts. So thank you very much for this presentation, which was very clear and fascinating.